And normally at this time in our service, our liturgist would come up and read a long scripture passage, and then I'd come up and preach. But today we're going to do things a little differently. And it's the only time in my whole ministry that I've dedicated the sermon to an interview. And that's because, Rob, your life is a living sermon. And so, Rob, Rob, our scripture texts today are all inspired by you and your life's work.
Rob has spent his life doing justice, asking hard questions, uncovering hidden truths, and giving voice to the voiceless. Micah chapter 6, verse 8 says, "God has told you, O mortal, what is good and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God."
Even in the face of illness, Rob has not lost heart. He shows us that strength is found not in denying struggle, but in facing it with honesty and grace. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 8 through 9 and 16 through 18 say, "We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, prosecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. So we do not lose heart. Even though our outer nature is wasting away, our inner nature is being renewed day by day."
Rob's journalism has never been neutral. It has been a faithful of fasting, breaking of the yoke of silence, and exposing the structures that harm. Isaiah chapter 58, verses 6 and 8 or 7 say, Is not this the fast that I choose to loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into our house?
Through the decades of public conversation, Rob has created space for truth without hatred, peace rooted in justice, not silence. Matthew chapter 5, verse 9 says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God."
So, from the heart of St. Petersburg, where faith meets action, this is a special edition of Allendale This Week. Today we are honored to host a conversation with a distinguished guest whose voice has been guiding the light in Tampa Bay's media landscape for over 4 decades. As the founding News and Public Affairs Director for WMNF and the longtime host of WEDU's Florida This Week, he has fostered informed dialogue on the pressing issues of our time. Now, as he embarks on a new chapter with his interview series, Perspectives, he continues to illuminate the stories that shape our community. Please help me in welcoming Rob Lorei to Allendale This Week.
So I was telling Andy that's way over the top. I wish my 92-year-old mom could be here because she's quite a Catholic, and she thinks I'm going to go to hell. So I guess we'll talk about that.
Yeah, a lot of people come in my office sometimes and ask about hell, and what I end up telling them is, I believe if hell's a real place, I believe it's empty. I just believe that much in the love and pursuit of God. But Rob, I'm so grateful that you're here. We're going to spend the next 25 minutes just talking about your legacy and what you've given to this community, but also your perspectives on what's going on in the world. And I just want to start out, the question I'm getting most right now, everywhere I go, strangers come up to me in the street or while I'm eating lunch and say, what do we do now? And so I'm just wondering, in the midst of everything that's happening in our state and in our country, what helps you hold on to hope in this time? And this it feels like we're going backwards. And what helps you hold on to hope in this moment?
Well, I really do think the truth will out. And I think that truth is on our side. Truth is on the side of peacemakers. I don't think that we should be burning Teslas, by the way. But I think that we should nonviolently show and witness that what is going on in Washington, what's going on in Tallahassee is wrong. And I think we do that by promoting the truth. We do that by promoting love of one another. I had this rule on my radio show that you don't call people names and you don't denigrate people. That if you have an argument against something, then make that argument. Make it based on facts and make it based on reason. But I think if we use reason and facts and truth on our side, I think we're going to win eventually. It's a struggle because there is a wall of misinformation coming at us every day. And they're attacking us personally every day. But I wouldn't get down to their level. I'm with Michelle Obama on that. That we should be tough, we should stand up, and we should fact check as much as we can. But I have tremendous hope. I'll tell you, and this is kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but I grew up in a Catholic family, and there are 10 brothers and sisters in my family. The family's split, so I've got 2 or 3 strong Catholics in the family. I've got 2 or 3 born-again Christians in the family, and then I've got 2 or 3 or maybe 4 that haven't really identified or maybe on the liberal side. But what gives me hope is that my brother Kevin, who's the 5th brother in my family, was gay. And my parents were Kennedy Democrats, but then they switched and they voted for Nixon, and then my dad passed away, but my mom voted for Trump. So I know that they've become more conservative over time. When my brother Kevin came out as gay about 25 years ago, both my parents, who were very conservative, embraced Kevin because they loved him. And I think it's because of that personal interaction with Kevin that my parents didn't go ballistic. My brother Kevin, as you can see, I'm Anglo. My brother Kevin decided to marry a black man. And my parents, to their credit, even though they're conservatives, and even though my mom is a Trumper, embraced Tony, my brother-in-law, as one of the family. And I think that we witness to everybody when we show that what we're doing is out of love. And I think my parents couldn't use homophobia against Tony and Kevin. They really changed their hearts. And it's because they met Tony. They knew Tony he's a brilliant lawyer. And they knew that Tony had something to offer, and they couldn't use racism or homophobia against Tony or homophobia against the relationship. And I think it's that interacting personally that's really important.
Thank you for sharing that. You've given your life to journalism and making sure us in this room get the story and get it correctly. You also came as a very young man to this area to start WMNF, going door to door. You started it at a Methodist church.
That's right.
Reverend John Powers, who appointed me here to Allendale, helped you have space to start. What do you think in this current moment that the media is getting right, and what are they getting wrong?
Mm-hmm. I got to thank the Methodist Church because John Powers gave us a place to put the radio station for about 5 or 8 years. And John was, I just saw him at an anti-gun demonstration a few years ago. John was way ahead of his time. And I think bucking some of the powers that be within the Methodist hierarchy. Mm-hmm. But he was a great guy, and I still honor him as I honor Andy. What the media gets right and wrong is that we give too much time to Trump. And so everything that Trump says, everything that Trump does is headlined across the media. And we don't give enough time to the people that are struggling against what Trump is doing. And we don't show the results of what Trump is doing. For instance, when he cuts USAID and stops feeding hungry people in Africa, what is the impact on people in Africa? So we've yet to see a bunch of stories about that. There might have been one or two, but the media doesn't do that. They take in everything Trump says. This latest thing where James Comey, the former head of the FBI, is being accused of threatening Trump, threatening his life. He's being investigated by the Secret Service. How many times in the last 20 years did you hear prominent Republicans, including President Trump, threaten the lives of people and not be investigated by the Secret Service? It happened over and over again. So as I read the Tampa Bay Times this morning and they were discussing the Comey incident, they didn't mention all the other times where Sarah Palin puts targets on Barack Obama, sends out a fundraising message. G. Gordon Liddy was suggesting that both Bill and Hillary Clinton be shot. He said, use headshots when you're aiming at pictures of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. And then Trump himself had posted a picture of tying up Joe Biden and putting him in the back of a truck and really kidnapping him so that he's laying on his side and he's all trussed up. But that is one of the most violent images I've ever seen. So what the media gets wrong is that they wait for every utterance of Trump, but they don't compare it. Gore Vidal had this phrase that he used to say, Americans are forgetful. We live in the United States of amnesia, and we don't remember what's gone on in the past. And what the media needs to do is put the Comey incident in context, and it hasn't put it in context.
Yeah, I guess we need to say a prayer for Bruce Springsteen right now because that's who's.
I think Springsteen's going to come back, and I hope Dylan, he does an American tour.
Dylan, let's be sure we do a Springsteen song next week, okay?
Yeah.
So what roles do you think faith communities like Allendale can play in this moment in resisting injustice and building a more just world?
I think you guys are our conscience. The people that are burning Teslas or maybe using violence as a way to get their point across if they're angry at President Trump or angry at Republicans, I think the folks in this room are our conscience, just like the Quakers are our conscience or the Catholic workers movement is our conscience. I think people of faith need to say our values are peace and love and social justice and honesty, and remind our brethren and sisters who are on the liberal side or on the left-wing side that please tone it down a bit, because the way to get there is to do what the civil rights movement did in the 1960s. My dean of students, his brother was killed during the beginning of Mississippi summer. You remember Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney. Well, my dean of students was Steve Schwerner, Andrew Schwerner's brother. Mine too. Really? Oh, we got to talk. So, the civil rights movement ultimately was one of the largest nonviolent revolutions in world history. People were killed, but mostly it was the civil rights movement people that were killed. I don't think anybody on the other side was killed during it. And it showed that the civil rights workers, before they went south, were told, you might die. Be prepared. Get ready. And they were that strong, and they went down there anyway. White and black, Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, all denominations went down. And they knew that when they went down to sign up people to vote in the South, which was a very dangerous thing to do in 1963, 64, 65, that they may be killed for that simple act of conveying dignity to everybody. And so I think that we as faithful people need to exert our values and say we really do believe in nonviolence and we believe in love. We don't believe the people on the other side are evil or deserve to be denigrated. They're misguided, yes, but we shouldn't call them names. And we should show that love to them to show that there's a better way. And everything that we've heard this morning during this marvelous service talks about opening up those doors and not being afraid of people. You know, I'll just jump ahead a little bit too. So I grew up Catholic, and back in the day in 62, 63, 64, 65, I was an altar boy for a little bit of time. And they used to read long segments of the gospel. And I went to my uncle's funeral last week in a Catholic church, and the gospel is about this big. It's about 4 sentences. But I remember from the gospel amazing lessons being taught about the Good Samaritan turning water into wine, feeding the loaves and fishes to many people. And the priest would read these stories for 10 minutes. Really important passages. These were liberal passages of the church service that I used to go to. I think the Catholic Church has downplayed those liberal lessons and really shortened the gospel to the detriment, I think, of the Catholic Church. And I think that, you know, if we get back to the true meaning of the faith, what Jesus said, I think we're all going to be better off.
You have been very public and open about your personal journey. And you recently shared about your cancer diagnosis. If you want to say a little bit about that, there are a lot of people here who are going through the same thing, who are grieving still the loss of others in their lives. How has it changed the way that you see the world and what you think is important?
I said on my TV show as I was leaving, because I had to step down because I was dealing with cancer, I said my heart goes out to everybody who's dealing with cancer, because I know many people are. I walk into the Moffitt Cancer Center in North Tampa, and there are thousands of people every day. Thousands of people every day. A lot of them are younger than me. I'm 70 years old. And my heart goes out to them. I'm surprised, too. A lot of my friends have come up to me and said, I've got cancer. And a lot of my friends have been keeping it secret and not told me anything about this. And I think that, you know, we kind of keep our cancer diagnosis quiet. We deal with it silently. I've seen a lot of people up there at Moffitt who are all alone and come up there by themselves. Sometimes they're walking in canes. Sometimes they've lost all their hair. Sometimes they've lost all their weight. And I think there's a huge problem out there that we as a society should be dealing with. And especially now, because I think the number of cancer patients is growing, the Trump administration is cutting back funding for university research into medical issues, medical problems. And one of the things that's getting hit is cancer research. So how could Trump in good conscience do this when so many of his people, I see these Trump bumper stickers as I drive into Moffitt, people are driving in as patients to Moffitt, they've got Trump bumper stickers. Well, Trump is cutting funding to research the very diseases that they're going through. And my heart does go out to these people, because I think some of these people are suffering in silence. Some people are keeping it secret. It happens to a lot of people. It's happening to more and more people. And anyway, what was the question?
Has it changed your perspective on life and what you feel is important?
You know, for years we carried this show on WMNF, Alan Watts, and he was a Buddhist. And Alan talked sometimes about samsara, which is expecting things are going to be really bad. And if you expect things are going to be bad, then when they're bad, it's really not going to hurt that much. And I've kind of internalized that. And, you know, death is part of life. It's something, it's the great equalizer. It's something that we're all going to have to go through. And I've seen enough death in my family and my friends, unfortunately. that I know I'm going to have to go through it. And my mom says to me, well, you've got to go back to the Catholic Church, and you've got to take the sacraments, and because you're not going to get to heaven. And I say, Mom, do you think that God is merciful? And she says, yes. Do you think God loves us? And she says, yes. And I said, I think I'm okay. Whatever happens at the end, I got to say, I'm kind of excited. I don't want to sound too giddy about this, but I'm kind of excited to see what happens next. I mean, it could be like the scientists say that nothing happens, or it could be that we enter this whole new realm that we have no idea because we're stuck in these 4 dimensions here we can't see. So I'm kind of excited about what happens next, and nobody gets out alive, like Jim Morrison said. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, this is a frequent question I get sometimes when people come into my office. They want to know what happens, right? They're asking me. And
because you've been there.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's been a real detriment of the church that there are some churches and some of my colleagues feel that they need to try to have all the answers, as if there's no mystery to what happens. I went to a service one time where the pastor told everyone exactly what heaven's going to look like. The Gen X in me kind of threw up a little bit. But the older I've gotten, and maybe this is a bit of what you're expressing too, the more I've been okay with mystery. And I think there's something special and valuable in some things being mystery. Mm-hmm. And so I'm okay to put what happens after I die into the category of mystery, and meantime put my energy into building beloved community, heaven on earth here, in the work that we do together. And like you, I'm excited to find out what happens on the other side.
Yeah. I have a golfing buddy, and he's dying of lung cancer. He's a Navy veteran. He was an engineer. And every Sunday we would go out and play golf for the last 3 or 4 years. And on Tuesday, he texted me. We were talking about maybe playing golf this weekend or next weekend. And he said, Rob, I can't do it. That's it. I'm done. But, the good thing about it, and my uncle did this too a couple weeks ago, is that we have such a strong hospice system in our country, and that people have access to it. And, I think of the people in Gaza who are being killed indiscriminately right now, out of nowhere. They're sitting on the side of the road trying to eat, and suddenly these bombs come and kill them. And it happens all over the world too, in Ukraine and other parts of the world. I'm so lucky to be in the U.S. I'm so lucky to be in a developed nation where I get to choose pretty much that I can die in bed at home with the help of hospice. And I think that that's a tremendous thing. I often think how lucky I am because of all the struggles that we've talked about. I mean, we used to talk about struggles in Vietnam, struggles in Central America. Kids these days, even here in Florida, 50% of the kids that go to our public schools live in poverty, so much so that they're eligible for subsidized school breakfasts and lunches. I wasn't born that way. My parents were just above the poverty line. I think how lucky I am. All my brothers and sisters are still alive. They're all doing well. And I think that, I got lucky. But I think that because of that luck, too, that it's my job, because I was been given this tremendous, tremendous gift. I mean, it's not like I'm living in Gaza. It's not like I'm living in Salvador or revolutionary in some developed nation in Haiti that still hasn't worked its way out of its problems. That because I've been given this gift, it's up to me to try to heal the world in some way that I can, because I've got for 70 years, I was given perfect health. For 70 years, I got a great education. I got access to everything I needed to do my job. I had tremendous influence because I did this program on Channel 3, TV program every Friday night. And I still think it's my job to try to heal the world, which is a Jewish concept, tikkun olam, that we're here, and what we should do is take the strength that we have and use it to make a better world.
Yeah. In light of all that, you've spent your career helping other people tell their story, giving them a platform. Has that affected the way that you are now sharing your own story and maybe found some ways to persevere during your toughest times?
You know, I think I initially told Andy, nobody wants to hear from me because, you know, I mean, really it's important to hear from people who are on the front lines. I'm a little bit less on the front lines than I used to be. So I tried to talk Andy out of having me do this. And I got to say, I'm a little bit uncomfortable talking, you know, I mean, you said such nice words to me, and, you know, if my family were here, about a third of them would be laughing and objecting, raising their hand, objecting. But I remember the TV station that I worked for in 1978 rejected a documentary about farm workers, because the documentary is called A Day Without Sunshine, and it talked about the plight of farm workers right here in Central Florida. I've been to farm worker homes. I've seen farm workers work in the fields here in Central Florida. It's not easy. I picked oranges for a day just to see what it was like. I made $24 by filling almost 4 or 5 bathtubs full of oranges, the equivalent. And I made $24, no Social Security taken out, no water, no restrooms, and I had to move a ladder myself. And the trees I was on had to be stripped 100% of oranges, or else I wouldn't get paid. And I saw how hard farm workers work here in Florida. I used to, when I was in college, one of my jobs, I did a work-study program in college, and I worked with coal miners. And despite what you see on TV and in movies, coal miners are Anglos, you know, Irish and Italian and Polish and German, and they're also African American. And so I worked in Dayton, Ohio, for what was called the Black Lung Program. And we were 30 steps above the street, and the coal miners would come to us for advice about how to get their black lung benefits. By the time each coal miner, and they were all in their 40s and 50s, by the time each coal miner had come up those 30 steps, they were out of breath and had to sit down. And they were, sometimes their families would bring them, and they'd be coughing up blood and coal dust at night. Their lungs were scarred from working underground for 10 or 15 or 20 years. Well, we would take those coal miners to a hearing before the Social Security Administration to try to get them black lung benefits, to try to get some really disability compensation for their inability to breathe. And the coal companies always said, this coal miner was a smoker, and the reason why at the age of 50 they can't breathe is because they smoked all their lives. Well, I knew the reason why they couldn't breathe was because they had worked in the coal mines since they were 18. And so we had to fight the coal companies to try to get black lung benefits. And I swore that if I ever got a chance to advocate on behalf of coal miners or farm workers or any other oppressed group, that I would give them a voice on the TV and radio stations that I had access to. So sure enough, on MNF, we always highlighted and we always talked about the struggles of the farm workers here in town. The Coalition of Immokalee Workers is trying to get a simple agreement from Publix to get Publix to only buy from tomato growers that pay them an additional 5 cents a pound, and Publix consistently refuses to do that. But we consistently try to point out that Publix was wrong in our radio interviews. And anytime workers, anytime people of color, anytime gays and lesbians, the GLBTQ community needed a voice, we always provided it at the radio station. At the TV station, I tried to provide voices for union members, and we talked about the farm worker issue. The TV station is a little bit more scared of some of the other issues, but we tried and we pushed. And Andy was on at least one of my TV shows. But I tried to push, and I tried to open doors. That was what I tried to do at the radio station and TV station, was open the doors to oppressed communities so we could try to even out the dialogue. You know, I can remember the Tampa Tribune used to do these surveys that said that Florida was a great place for companies to move to, and had all these criteria. And one of the criteria was it pays workers low wages. Well, that's not something to be proud of. Being a low-wage state is not something. It's not how you build a middle class. It's not how you help people to get to college or to advance. And so we always took shots at the Tampa Tribune when they came out with those studies, and we'd find an economist who said, "No, that's a way to the bottom. That's a race to the bottom. You're going to become like Mississippi and Alabama if you keep doing that." But I tried to open the doors to alternatives.
You have definitely done that. And a side note, the farm workers in Immokalee, they are the ones that really helped steer my ministry this way.
Good.
And so they gave a lot to me and to us today. We are out of time, but I wanted to just give you one closing thought. You've kind of named your legacy in this, about what your work has meant. What do you hope people remember? What do you hope we remember about your legacy?
Just never give up. The struggle is always worth it. In the end, you're on the right side of history. The struggle that you're conducting through this church and through the work that you do is all valuable. And you are way ahead of the time. You may not feel like you're being appreciated by your friends or some of your coworkers, but the struggle that you're undertaking here is valuable. Keep it up and don't give up.
Friends, let's give thanks.